And we're live. Good day to all of you BC WrestlePod nerds across the pond. I was about to pull out an Australian accent, and I realized that that is not the right continent for that. So don't ask me to do accents because I fail at them. But hello to all my BC WrestlePod nerds out there, and welcome to another rendition of the Grapple Gurus. This time, the Ultraviolet Union is back for a second week in a row, as we are covering GCW live in London, which is basically a GCW Progress Wrestling crossover show. So what better way than to have the two hosts of those respective promotions come together to review it? So, of course, you know, first and foremost, holding it down for GCW, as always, is Andrew. So, Andrew, I am happy to see you once again. This was a really fun show, and I can't wait to talk about it.
Absolutely. Your thoughts, anyone's thoughts about how things went at the Hammerstein. This was definitely a show that kind of either kept or picked up the momentum from that show. It was a lot of fun. I think we've both become fans of Progress, especially recently, really getting into it. Shout out to Triller for making that all possible. Yeah, this was, I love both the rosters of these companies, so getting them to see them clash, and we've seen a few people cross over between the promotions. We have the Collective coming up, which is going to be another big crossover with these two and with Defy, and I think Dragon Gate and DDT and a bunch of other promotions. So for me, as a wrestling fan, I love these kind of events, and I think it's part of the thing I really like about GCW is they really like crossing over with the promotion that is where they are and like giving those people that time, and going to a place like London with a promotion that's, close to the size that GCW kind of is in the States. I think that the competition was very equal in this, and it gave us some really good matches.
Oh, absolutely. And of course, as me excited to bring in Progress Wrestling to our rotation because I'm like, there's so much good British wrestling, and Progress has that, moniker of being one of the top British promotions outside of
Mm.
Rev Pro. And I was just happy to see some folks that I know from Progress. I was like, especially when we get to our main event. I texted Andrew during the show. I'm like, I may or may not have cried a little bit that I got to see Car Noir is one of my favorite Progress wrestlers, and we'll get into him. But before we jump into everything, if you like what you see here, follow us all over the social medias. We're on Facebook, we have Instagram, we have a Threads, we're on Blue Sky. Of course, we have YouTube and Twitch. We also have merchandise. Link in the description below this video because yeah, it's fun. Look at that design. Andrew's rocking our Squatchamania Running Wild t-shirt. We have some fun stuff. We have fun here. So perfect way to get a sweater, a long sleeve tee, a t-shirt, a mug. Spoil yourself because it's a holiday somewhere.
Yeah.
Somewhere. Treat yourself to something nice. Alrighty. So I am now going to kind of tag in Andrew as he leads us through this. I am super excited. This is going to be a lot of fun. So Andrew, I tag you in, and yeah, where should we start?
Well, I feel like the beginning is a good place to start, and they definitely started us off well for this event. I was very excited to see this. I've been seeing Lyco's Gym wrestle a lot, so I knew them going against the Garbage Daddies was going to be pretty fun. And I feel like Garbage Daddies has started a lot of events lately for GCW. They just have such good high energy, and so does Lyco's Gym. I enjoyed this match. I thought it was a lot of fun. I think it really got the fans hyped. But what did you think about seeing the Garbage Daddies go up against this team of Lycos Gym?
So first and foremost, got to shout out the Progress crowd in the Electric Ballroom for this one because they kept up the energy the
Mhm.
entire night, and I loved every single moment of it. Now, as far as these two teams, of course, we both are just coming off of watching the Garbage Daddies win the GCW Tag Team Championships not that long ago, literally a week ago. And so now they're already flying all over the world defending these things. Fantastic. And honestly, I really love that because of the style the Garbage Daddy wrestles as a tag team. I felt that Lyco's Gym was like a very good opponent for them because they are very similar as well. I want them to fight again. I need a round two. I'm like, by the end of this match, I'm like, no, give me 5 more minutes. Don't, no. This was fantastic. They complement each other so
Mhm.
well.
Absolutely. I think this was a lot. It was one of those situations where same worked really well. We just had young high flyers who go out there and do things that you feel like they're risking their safety, but do it in such a way that they just make it kind of look effortless. Um, I really love this tag team of Alec Price and Cole Radrick because Alec Price is definitely the much more high flyer of the two. Cole will do some stuff, but he's kind of more of the gritty wrestler. And so seeing the two of them go up against a team like Lycos Gym, who does have a bit more experience as a tag team, are one of the top, teams in Progress, was fun. And I think it was a good choice for their first title defense. Like you said, they went outside of the States to defend the title. Um, it just kind of gives them that air of like they're jumping into that tag team championship seat really well. And there were even times when I don't want to say that I felt like Lycos Gym was going to win, but there were times where I felt like the Garbage Daddies were in trouble, which is good. I want to feel that way. Even if I know who's going to win, I want there to be moments of kind of questioning that.
No, and you bring up a good point too, because many a times when we have champions, we always figure, especially here with more of the major promotions, we're like, oh, yeah, there's no way that this person's going to lose their championship, which kind of takes the fun out of it
Hmm.
because a lot of the champions tend to be built super strong and they kind of just run through the roster, so to speak. I love I love champions that are, we got to be careful because if we're not, somebody's about to take these titles from us. So I love a good back and forth struggle, and definitely, I think this was a good kind of first step out.
Hmm.
Be like, oh no, Lyco's gym is about that life, so we need to figure out how we're going to retain these. So it was really nice to see them be able to retain the championships, but it also, for me personally, it was nice to see them. It's like, oh yeah, they earned this win to retain
Hmm.
those championships.
Absolutely.
Because Lyco's gym made me believe I was like, no, they wouldn't take the titles off them. Would they? Nah, I'm crazy. But hey, they did a good job of making me doubt, and that's a sign of me. I was like, oh, so it's a lot more back and forth than I thought it was going to be.
Absolutely. Well, and coming out of this, I think we had a lot of respect between these two tag teams, and we just kind of kept that momentum going as we went into the next match, which was basically the singles version of that match, Sydney Akeem versus Angel Blanc. Um,
Very
and
French.
and I've never actually seen Blanc wrestle before. I went and watched a couple of clips, so I kind of had an idea what we were going to get with him against Sydney Akeem, and obviously Sydney Akeem, we kind of know what we're going to get. Um, I Again, this was great. It took that momentum and it just kept going from the opening match into this match. There was clearly a lot of hype, like we talked about it before we started the stream of how invested the audience was. The fans were just there. They were rooting for everybody on both sides, whether they were hometown or not. People cheered for Sidney Akeem because they respect, what he can do. But then obviously Blanc is a known commodity there as well. And so we got this throughout the night of the fans supporting both sides of the matchups, and in some cases even cheering the GCW wrestlers over the like home wrestlers. Um, and this was a match that I felt like maybe it was coming out of the Garbage Daddy's Lycos gym match that the audience was really pumped into it. How do you think Blanc stacked up against Sidney Akeem? Do you think this was one of his more think up of this match?
so I I'm with you. I'm very fairly new to Blanc as a wrestler. I was like, I need to do my homework a little bit. I liked what I saw. And so when I saw those clips, and of course, we've seen Sydney wrestle multiple times in GCW, so we know what to expect. I actually really like this match. I feel that I don't know if this is going to make a lot of sense, but I feel that this was a different dimension in the way that Sydney wrestles because, usually we're used to seeing him go up against like other high flyers, like to name a couple few, like we saw him against Vikingo at, Hammerstein. Him and Leon Slater went at it at Fight Club, earlier towards the tail end of last year. But I feel like for the sense of watching Sydney in GCW, I feel like Blanc added a little bit of a wrinkle. It was like, oh, you can do all this stuff. Watch me do this too.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, let the Frenchman fly. So it was really interesting to watch Sydney have to kind of think a little bit differently of how he's going to, because he's used to like the speedy high flyers. Blanc to me is very calculated in the way that he wrestles, in the sense that, he's like, all right, I'm gonna go over here and then I'm gonna get you over here and then bam, I hit you with this. So I'm just like, which again is, I talk about this all the time when we do CMLL with Lucha Libre. I love luchadors and masked wrestlers that have intelligence behind their wrestling. It's like, okay, what am I going to do in order to get one up on my opponent? And Sydney had to be able to counteract all that. So, of course, he ended up walking out with the win here, but I loved watching Sydney have to kind of think on his feet a little bit, answering against someone like Blanc, who put a little bit of thought behind how he was going to take out Sydney.
I mean, that German suplex counter of the final act,
was nuts.
That was so brutal. And then Sydney finishing the match with that. He did that kind of inverted kip up thing that he does to avoid Blanc, and then hit 3 flips into the final act and finish the match. I mean, it was that finishing sequence was pretty well done, and I thought they both pulled it off really well. Like I said during the People versus GCW event, I'm really hoping that we're going to see some new. I want to see some story development with Sydney Akeem at this point. I like the fact that he's got this undefeated streak, but now let's put a little more depth into this. And I'm hoping that obviously this was a specialty, event. So hopefully once we get back to the States, which they do tomorrow, we will get to see some more development with Sydney Akeem and where he's going, because I think there's even more that he has to show us. So I'm really excited about it.
Yeah, I agree with you, because we have seen, I feel like we have reached a point with Sydney where we've seen him of what he can showcase and what he can do. So now let's start putting some story writing behind him. And I mean, you brought it up during our, the People versus GCW review. Remind me again, what was the name of the 2 individuals who were accompanying Sydney?
It's Culture Incorporated.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, if we start a little faction with those 3, I would be here for it. Because listen, in wrestling in 2025, factions are going to help even the numbers game for you, as we have saw. Yeah.
And I think, Sydney Akeem makes sense too, because Culture is they're pretty young, pretty new. We've seen them in GCW. I've seen them at least once. And I think Sydney would just really fit that mold of kind of being a mentor and a leader while still being in his prime. And it can really, really bring something to both sides of it. And just add a new wrinkle and see where we go with that.
Oh, absolutely.
But we move out of the high-flying action into some I'll say some comedy wrestling with also a bit of, grit, as we have Maki Effie Ito taking on men like Doris. I think this might be the first match, at least in a really long time, that I've seen both competitors come out singing their own entrance music.
I loved it so much.
And it's funny too, because both of these performers can go into the more aggressive wrestling style, but oftentimes play to a lot of the comedic stuff. So it was fun to see a lot of what they did. But what were your highlights of this matchup between these 2?
First and foremost, I need more wrestling promotions to lean into the comedy style of wrestling, because these 2 are just perfect for this. But I also got a lot of the hard hitting that I know that Maki and Doris can go. I don't know what was my favorite part, because the whole match was my favorite part. Like, we got the classics. First and foremost, we had a karaoke sing along for like the first 5 minutes between Maki's theme song and Doris's theme song. I loved it so much. Then, of course, we had the spots of, I love that Doris did not care about, throwing Maki around the ring. I was like, yes, because we know Maki will actually kill you if you give her the chance. I love her. Of course, we got the Maki fake tears, which the crowd was like, boo this man. We got a whole Pokemon theme song sing-along to power up Maki. I want these 2 to be a tag team. Like they are so good. This was just a fun match, and sometimes we just need that in wrestling. Was this the most, technical? Not really, but that doesn't stop me from enjoying this match, because we still got some good wrestling, but we got some comedy and entertainment. And I feel like sometimes as wrestling fans, we forget about the entertainment portion of sports entertainment. So I love this match. And I think from an entertainment standpoint, this is probably my favorite entertainment match of the whole entire card. I was smiling from ear to ear, and I love this. This is so good. This was fun.
Well, and it brought in that, more international style, Monkey bringing in that Japanese style. I tell a lot of people, if you haven't seen GCW's tour in Japan, you should really go watch it, especially if you're a GCW fan, because it's a whole new way of seeing GCW wrestlers, because so many of them respect the Japanese style and traditions of professional wrestling, but you get to see the Japanese wrestlers like interact with them, and it's so like seeing Maki Ito wrestle there with GCW was such a like different, because it was, instead of seeing her in the world of GCW, it was seeing GCW in the world that she comes from. And Darius obviously has his own style. But yeah, it was fun. It was entertaining. It felt like, I don't want to say, oh, what's up?
Hi,
What's up?
Will.
Well,
Sorry.
you gonna start watching GCW yet or what?
I feel like Will would actually really like this Maki
I
Ito
know.
man like Darius match, because we love for good comedy wrestling. It's honestly, I feel like this would be a good show to introduce GCW and Progress.
Hmm.
Not to mention, I feel like we're going to see a lot of these folks, especially because, Scott Demore is out here trying to plan to take over 2025, because we got two Maple Leaf Pro
Hmm.
Wrestling events coming up. And I'm just like, I'm excited. But I feel like this would be a good show to actually introduce Will to GCW and Progress.
100%.
You can never go back through the door.
But speaking of introducing people to GCW and Progress, the next match was also a great introduction to what to expect from GCW and Progress in two of their hardest hitting competitors going head to head. I told you when I saw this matchup, I text you that I want to see One Called Manders do a run in Progress. Honestly, like,
Yes.
I think the American Cowboy in England
Just
facing
goes
off,
so well together.
yeah, get some of that like British strong style. Oh, would be so many good matches, and this was a great example of that. Um, how did you think that Luke Jacobs? I mean, obviously he kept up with One Called Manders, but what did you think of this matchup and how they delivered for the fans?
It's crazy to me. You would think that Manders is all part of the Progress roster, because the crowd,
Yes.
like the beginning of the match, and I love that Manders just played into it. He loved
Hmm.
it, doing the air guitar, getting the hat and everything. Manders has grown on me so much since we
Hmm.
started watching GCW. I love this man so much. And honestly, good on Manders, because he got to face the Progress, champion in
Hmm.
Luke Jacobs, who does a really good job, at least in terms of Luke Jacobs, of towing the line between being an absolute turd as a heel, but not really a heel.
Hmm.
But I thought somebody was about to get their block knocked off, because I personally know that Luke Jacobs is very grounded in that strong hitting British style of wrestling. And we have seen Manders knock a couple heads, of his own in a couple other GCW shows. I want a round two, and if I'm going to be completely honest, I would love to see Manders challenge Luke Jacobs for the Progress Championship, just even in a one-off. And hey, you know what? You brought up the fact that Manders needs to do a Progress run. I feel like we might be getting that, because he is scheduled for the Love of Progress on Valentine's Day.
Honestly, I think he's done a lot in GCW, and there's so many stories going on there. Letting him go over to Progress and just, spend the spring in England doing some wrestling out there, I think could be a lot of fun and give us some
Put
really cool matchups.
put Commanders in the Super Strong 16 in May.
Yes,
Put him in that tournament.
I'd be down for it. And I have to say, this is actually their second meeting. Jacobs is actually 2-0 against Manders. So I would love to see, though. I was kind of hoping that this matchup was going to be for the title, even though obviously I would have expected Jacobs to win in that case. But I
Right.
think it could have been fun. And this match was fun. It was hard hitting. It was brutal. It was rough, and they both gave it to each other. Luke Jacobs eventually walks out the victor, but yeah, I think Manders definitely won a lot of fans in this, and hearing the crowd chanting his name and singing songs about him was definitely one of the highlights of the evening.
Oh my gosh, I loved it so much. I wanted to see Manders have a great 2025. I was like, he's gonna be busy too, because
Yeah.
I have to look it up because I think Manders is scheduled for some other things so far in 2025. You know what? Since we're getting GCW invasion angles, I would love for him to hop on over. I mean, if Mance and Steph DeLander are currently in TNA, can you imagine Manders in TNA versus anybody on that? Him versus Mike Santana is a dream match I would love to see.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of fun matches out there for Manders, and especially being the modern cowboy, I think he does it pretty well and keeps it pretty interesting.
Oh, absolutely. And you know what? I'm excited to see what comes next for Luke Jacobs because he has his work cut out for him for My Own Destiny at the end of February because he has to defend that championship against, the winner of the Boston Key in Tate Mayfair's, which I'm super excited with. I think that match is going to be amazing.
Well, doesn't he have? Am I correct? Does he have a tag team match coming up? Yeah, he's wrestling Subculture
That match
with
is going to
Ethan Allen.
slap.
Yeah. So obviously no title involved there, but yeah, it's a rivalry match. That's gonna be brutal.
That's a blood feud right there.
But yeah, we move on from this matchup to a kind of the young up and comer of Leon Slater, who's we've seen in TNA quite a
Love
bit,
Leon.
but he's at home in Progress wrestling against the reinvigorated Jimmy Lloyd, no longer Broski Jimmy, finally getting rid of those one-legged tights that I don't think anyone was a fan of. But this was an interesting match for me. Both these two have very different styles. I kind of expected Jimmy Lloyd to come out victorious, especially because of his whole big moment of denouncing his broski hood. But Leon Slater ended up coming out the victor. What'd you think about getting to see Jimmy Lloyd kind of return to Jimmy Lloyd? And how did you think Leon Slater kind of presented himself against this GCW kind of stalwart?
So I'll start with Jimmy first. I thought it was very interesting. Like you brought it up. I was expecting Jimmy to win here. I wasn't, listen, I will forever and a day, like Leon Slater is that dude for me. Leon, I'm really hoping Leon has a big 2025. And it seems that, in his other home promotion here in the States, it seems that we're building him towards something. But in terms of this match, on paper, I was very interested to see how the two styles would mix because Jimmy Lloyd has a certain move set, and we know what Leon can do, both in GCW and Progress and TNA, and just how he is very energetic and high flying when it comes to all of this. I actually really like this match. I'm hoping that, and this is just me, what I don't want to see for Jimmy is that now that he denounced the broski hood of it all, I don't want to see him go on a losing streak because that's what tends to happen in wrestling is when someone denounces their old faction and becomes a face again, we just see them lose and lose and lose. Did I also mention that they tend to lose? So I'm hoping because this was more of a specialty crossover show, and since I'm going to be 100% honest, I think whenever Luke Jacob drops that title, I personally believe that Leon Slater should be the next one to hold that Progress Championship.
Wow.
And so I believe in the last couple of months, Leon has had 2 championship matches, and they always ended in some crazy way. So I would not be surprised if we see that Progress Championship end up on the waist of Leon Slater this year. So I am not surprised that Leon picked up the victory here, because since Progress has been building up Leon, a win here is actually pretty good, and it still puts him in contention. I just hope that this does not turn into a losing streak for Jimmy Lloyd. That's what I don't want to see.
Absolutely. And, the part of this could be because there's no storyline going on here. So this could be a one-off for Jimmy Lloyd, and he's going to continue his story in GCW once they're back home. We'll wait to see. And, like you said, I have high hopes for Leon Slater, too, having seen him in TNA. I still really hope that they kind of live up to the hype of him being the youngest X Division champion. I think that'd be a great choice for him. And what a 2025 for him to hold the TNA X Division title and potentially a Progress title as well. So best wishes to both of them. I'm excited to see where they both go from this matchup. It was a fun, entertaining match, and we'll see where they go. But we move out of a more, I would call it a tame match by comparison to our following matchup. As we saw Big F and Joe take on Joey Janela, and man, this was a rough match. And I mean that in the best way possible, not as in their execution of things, but the things that they did to each other was brutal. And I don't think it's a surprise to anyone who's seen either of these two wrestle that it kind of went the way that it did. There were tables, chairs, grinders, plastic bins, all kinds of ridiculous things in this. This felt like it was the hype to get us prepped for our big 3 matches that came after this. This was kind of the get us to the top of the mountain and just kind of enjoy the rest of the excitement of the show. What did you think of this matchup between Big F and Joe and Big F and Joe and Joey Janela? And what were your highlights of the match?
So first and foremost, I still get a kick of the tidy whities on Big F and Joe. I'm just like, it's ridiculous, but like in the best way possible. Second of all, I feel like Joey Janela is a masochist, because he goes from having a hard-hitting match with, Tanaka at Hammerstein, and then now he goes into this crazy-ass death match with Big F and Joe, who we seen him brutalize. And if I remember correctly, didn't he have a weed whacker at Homecoming too that he utilized? Yeah. Like, he took out people with a weed whacker. So when I saw this on paper, I was just like, oh, this is going to be crazy. I am going to be, I was completely honest here. I'm kind of surprised we didn't see more blood. This is actually pretty clean for these two. I wonder if that has to do with, I don't know, British wrestling has something different. But then again, British wrestling also gets very bloodied. But yeah, some highlights for me include the freaking door, man. Like, anytime there's a door, I'm like, well, at least it broke this time, because poor Joey didn't go through the table correctly at Hammerstein. I was like, he just bounced off that thing. So I'm like, at least something broke when they went through it this time. So that was the whole thing, but barely.
One of those doors only cracked, and then Joey just threw himself through it to fully break it all the way. That double stomp when the door didn't break, you saw it crack but not break. And I was like, oh, God, that's so rough.
I'm like, someone's about to break a foot or something. But no, I really enjoyed this match, and I'm glad that we actually got to see a quote-unquote hardcore death match in here. And it's funny, because I was like, Big F and Joe is not a Progress wrestler, but he feels like he belongs here for some odd reason. But yeah, this was definitely the specialty match of the specialty crossover show. I love that Joey has become one of the faces of GCW. So put this man over. And again, I said it during our Hammerstein review. I love that Joey and how he's kind of turned around from all the stuff. And now he's out here doing amazing. And this match was a lot of fun. This was the match where it's like, we're just going to throw each other through things, and we're going to entertain the crowd. And so I was like, we need at least one death match. So I'm glad we got it.
Yeah, it definitely had a lot of, fun excitement. And I will point out that Big F and Joe is from Norfolk, England, so he kind of is a hometown wrestler. I mean, at least comparatively to Joey Janela. Um it it was brutal, it was rough. I mean, Big F and Joe's pretty much willing to do whatever, and Joey Janela is pretty much willing to take whatever. So they put it on. I enjoyed it. It was a lot of fun. Kind of really got me excited for the rest of the card. But this next match was the match I think I was looking forward to the most. I know you were hyped about the main event, but
The
this
main
match,
event was cool and all, but this was the
yeah,
match that I was looking forward to the most. I'm like, these bad bitches are about to fight, and I'm here for it all.
we had Masha Slamovich defending her JCW world title against Megan Bain. This is a rematch. They showed us the promos of what happened in the first matchup when Megan Bain challenged for the title and Steph DeLander got involved. So this was kind of a rematch to give Megan a chance she rightfully deserves to try and win that title. And we had a surprise finish in this. Before this matchup happened, I was hoping that Megan was going to win this title, because I thought this was a good place to hand this title over to Megan, because I feel like it's about time. But I also thought that maybe that would set up a trilogy match, so they'd be one and one, and they would go into a rubber match, potentially at the J Cup. But I think we got something else that'll set up something very similar. But before we get to the finish, what were your thoughts on this match? Did it live up to the hype? Did it compare to the first one? Are you excited for potentially another matchup between these two?
Listen, I want these two to fight forever. Look, it is no secret that whether she is in GCW or in TNA, Masha is that girl for me. And like, Megan is also that girl. Shout out to Megan too, because the reports are coming out that she's getting matches on AEW television too. So I was just like, you go, Megan. I'm here for all of it. But yeah, on paper, when I saw this match being signed, I was just like, I may have cried tears of joy through my phone. I'm like, honestly, this match was everything I wanted it to be. And I mean, not to spoil things, the ending had me. I was like, normally I'm not a fan of that, but you know what? I think this is setting up down the line, and I'm here for it. But yeah, I want these two to fight forever. I thought the match was great. This was fantastic. I love how these two have just been kind of over the last couple months have been within their circle. Because lest we forget too, Megan teamed up with Masha back at night two of Fight Club when they took on, our douchey heels in Carrie and Griffin, which I love both of them too. I'm ready for this rematch because Masha's like, yeah, no, we're not having it end like this. Like, we need to do this. Now, whether this means we get something at the J Cup or further down the line, I'm here for all of it. And the match itself, I loved it. I have no notes.
Well, as you kind of hinted at, we ended with the ever so rare double pinfall. Masha went to roll up Megan, and Megan kind of rolled back, and so they both pinned each other. So it was a draw, and Masha retains. Champion retains in the case of a draw. So we had interference in the first matchup. We had a draw in this matchup. The two of them looked like, Masha was saying, let's do it again. They shook hands, seemed to be on the same page. I kind of feel like we're going to get this at the J Cup, maybe on the second night or something, some way that they'll set this up. But I think they could use this as a way to crown Megan the champion and set up her next challenger or challengers through the J Cup. And it could bring a really, really fun match to that show. But either way, I'm looking forward to the third match between the two of these performers. They're not even some of the best women performers, but just some of the best performers out there right now. Masha, which is crazy to say because she's still so young too, is she's she's kind of the veteran in this case. She's been doing this for so long and she's been doing it so well and getting better and better every year. And Megan Bain, who is much newer, has been getting better and better every month. And these two are killing it. I hope the best for both of these two. And I love that it looks like they're getting that. So I can't wait to see what happens. And this third matchup could kill it too.
It's crazy that both these women are under 30 and they're
Yeah.
killing it already. And I feel like that's what I love about GCW because a good chunk of their roster is still fairly
Hmm.
younger. You know, looking at our tag team champions, Masha, Megan, Joey to a certain extent, like
Yeah.
I'm excited. I agree with you. I cannot wait to see where their rubber match ends up
Hmm.
being. I would love for them to just have a championship match at the J Cup
Hmm.
because, you know, outside of our tournament matches, I would love to see another standalone match and let it be for night one because night two is also going to get very crazy
Yeah.
because we have two psychopaths. Spoiler alert, we're about to have two psychopaths of different calibers go after each other. Mance Warner versus Gabe Kidd. Holy crap.
Just make it a death match. Just do it now. Don't even hold back. But speaking of Mance Warner and no holding back, our next match, our semi main event, was Drew Parker versus Mance Warner. This started out as and that graphic is outdated because Mance
Yeah.
was dethroned. No, totally. Um, and
I will say this GCW, I love y'all, but you got to update these graphics
yeah.
on Twitter that I find, but it's okay. We still love you.
Um, it started out as a standard match. The two of these guys kind of started, and then Mance didn't want any of it, so he went to leave. Drew Parker chased him down and officially announced that this would be a no DQ match. Um, and, GCW was happy to oblige. And so instead, we got two deathmatch wrestlers, pretty much Drew Parker and Mance Warner, facing off in a no DQ match. Um, that made me very happy because I think having these two, you want to have something where it's got a little more heat to it, especially since it's no longer a title match. Um, how did you think Mance fared coming out of his first matchup since losing the title? Um, he didn't have his same speech that he usually has at the beginning of the matches. And what'd you think about his first opponent being Drew Parker?
I love that we're still keeping Mance involved, even though he lost the championship. And I mean, shoot, this man's pulling double duty because he's still showing up to GCW, and
Mhm.
him and his actual real life girlfriend Steph Delander are causing havoc in TNA. Spoiler alert if you haven't watched the episode for tonight, but I'm just like Sammy Callahan versus Mance Warner. I need that to be like a crazy bloodied
Yes.
mess. I'm like, when you talk about deathmatch
Hmm.
wrestlers, Sammy Callahan, lest we forget, is also a deathmatch wrestler in his own right. So yeah, I'm kind of glad that Drew ended up being the post champion Mance Warner era that we are now finding ourselves in because Mance definitely had his work cut out for him because Drew
Hmm.
Parker was like, "Yeah, no." I was like, "I'm gonna bleed, but you're gonna work for this," and so of course, it makes sense to me that Mance does win. But this was great. I thought that, and this is what I need other companies to do too, because the biggest issue I always have is when we get a new champion and the old champion loses,
Hmm.
we kind of see them go away for a little bit. I was like, Mans needs to continue to be on television. And you know what? By him picking up this victory here, I hope the story we tell is that he wants to come after Effie. Effie has
Hmm.
made him go even super crazier. So I need a kill wall. I need something for Mance to be like, because that story's not over between him and Effie.
Hmm.
So I love that symbolically Mance Warner used Drew Parker to, revitalize his motivation of wanting to destroy Effie. So this was fun. This was a great match. I love this.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun, and like I said, the choice of making it no DQ definitely brought some more enticing action to it. But speaking of Effie and the world title, we move on to our main event. Effie, in his first title defense, taking on a Progress favorite in Cara Noir. Um, this match was a clash of characters kind of on different points on that spectrum. And it was, for me, I thought it was so entertaining. It was so funny to watch how these two, like, the very serious kind of proper, car noir versus the just the funny but also kind of like don't give a crap of effiness.
He don't give a fudge.
Yeah. Was against these two square up against each other, and I thought it was great. It was so much fun. I know you were excited looking forward to this, and you were had some feelings when this match was getting started, but by
Oh,
the
I am not
end,
afraid to admit I cried like a little bitch. Look, when I got into Progress Wrestling, one of my first true introductions was Cara Noir, and I was
Mhm,
just like, "How you gonna make the Black Swan like a whole wrestling character and make it work?" And he makes it work. I tend to gravitate towards the weird characters because as a kid who is grew up as a weirdo himself and has found himself being a complete weirdo as an adult, like I gravitate towards those characters, especially because Card Noir checks the box of like the exotico, as the term we use in
mhm,
Lucha Libre, of just very exotic. We love it. But the crazy thing is that despite Card Noir being a character, there is some very strong fundamentals of wrestling. Like his wrestling is so freaking good. And he is a fan favorite in
mhm.
progress because he not only is he a good wrestler, but the character is what gets him over with the crowd and they love him. The best way I could describe this match is like you have your art school brother in Car Noir taking on the fun loving gay uncle that is
Yeah.
Effie. And I will just say this: these two, we talked about this off like before we started, but these two have changed my mind on how eggs are supposed to operate. Holy crap. I was just like, I don't know whether to be appalled or slightly turned on. I don't know. I was like, this is weird, but I can't look away.
Yeah, the first thing I thought of when he spit the egg into Effie's mouth was Effie like standing back up and turning around and going just like I could see the internal monologue of Effie's mind of, "You think this is the worst thing I've had in my mouth?"
It's like, my turn.
And it was such a good because I think it was a good contrast to what happened earlier when Effie pulled his spot of his dropping down to his knees, and then Kara kind of lulled him in and grabbed his tongue and kind of played his side of that. This was like a good juxtaposition of Effie going like, "Oh, you want to get gross? We can get gross." And Effie went full there, and it just set up great for the finish, which was awesome. Um, it was so entertaining because, like you said, it was like the straight lace, proper, very ballet inspired performer against the uh, basically the kind of walking pride parade of Effie, who's just out there and just
He
no,
literally has an event called Big Gay Brunch.
yes.
Like, Effie is
Well,
the big gay Al of professional wrestling.
and I love it too, knowing Effie's history about how much him being able to accept himself kind of alienated people in his life, and how much it's meant for him to support people like that. So every time Effie just gets to live in his grandeur, it's just entertaining for me. Um, and I thought this was a great international big name for him to put that title up against and pick up a victory.
Of course, I'm biased because I'm a big Car Noir fan. I was like, well, I mean, I knew he wasn't going to win the championship, but I was
Yeah.
like, no, the Black Swan losing. But I was like, you know what? I'm okay with this loss because Car Noir still looked very strong against Effie. This was such a fun one. And you know what? GCW apparently, to kind of not bury the lead a little bit, but GCW loves London so much that we'll be back in September with Bloodsport London. I'm like, oh my God. I can't even imagine which British wrestlers are about to pop up in this piece. Like, holy crap.
Yep. Well, that was a big announcement that we got for this event, was that was coming back. And I first of all, I love that GCW makes these announcements during their events. It's so smart. But this, like, where Bloodsport is going, with like the different places that it pops up, kind of like this, the strong style tournament they have coming up. Like, there's so much potential for just seeing so much good violence. It could be a really fun show. I'm really excited.
Oh, absolutely. GCW has me and you and the rest of the fans like booked and blessed because this show was great. And we only have to wait like what 2 or 3 weeks before the next thing that we're going to be covering for GCW, which is the J Cup. I'm excited because this is my first like tournament like J Cup with GCW. So again, popping that GCW cherry, so to speak, with the J Cup, which makes me super excited. The field for this tournament is stacked AF. Like, so within the last week, because we went over like everybody who's involved in it, and I'm just like, holy crap. So literally not even 2 hours ago, we got the final 2 entrants. So there's a field of 20. So far, of course, we already have Masha, Amazing Red, Marcus Mathers, Jack Cartwheel, Fuego del Sol, Alec Price, Mr. Danger, Sidney Akeem, Leon Slater, Drew Parker, Clark Connors of New Japan fame. That's crazy. Rich Swan, Drake Ariz, Atticus Koger, Joey Janela, Kevin Knight, Cole Radrick. And then the final 2 entrants are Charles Mason and Mr. Teriyaki himself. I'm so excited for Terry. And not on top of that, too, we're getting Mance Warner versus Gabe Kidd on night 2. They're going to kill each other. Like, I'm excited for this tournament because that's going to be the focal point. But I'm excited to see what non-tournament matches we get for it. I'm excited for the J Cup. It's going to be great. But
before then, tomorrow we get Up All Night, which has a whole bunch of exciting matchups too that I think are gonna kill it. We're gonna get to see Masha defend her title as well as the GCW Tag Team Champions and some other fun matches too. So GCW just isn't slowing down. They, even though they're a company that doesn't have a weekly show, with the amount of shows that they pull each month, it's basically the equivalent of having a weekly show, and in some cases having a weekly show plus a big pay-per-view. So, if you're a GCW fan, you're not hurting for options, and they deliver. So, get out there, check them out if you're not, and if you are, enjoy the product because it's great.
Honestly, like, my closing thoughts with this one, I'm like, I feel like this is a good way to slowly introduce yourself to the world of GCW, because we got to see some of our new champions and some of the folks that are kind of around GCW. And honestly, I also think this is really good to introduce people to the Progress talent too, because not GCW isn't the only company being busy. So of course, as the Progress Wrestling correspondent, as in me, there are 2 events coming up in February. So for the Love of Progress 3, which has some really fun matches, surprisingly, the one I'm looking forward to the most, just because of how entertaining it's going to be, is Mr. Charles Crowley taking on Simon Miller for his championship. I'm just like, Simon Miller's amazing. I love him. He's great. He was probably the funniest bit for me during unboxing when he was in that tag team match. I was like, this is ridiculous. Also, Big Damo. Hey. I love those 2. But we got, for the Love of Progress, I mean, that subculture match I'm super excited for. But my biggest show that I'm looking forward to with Progress is My Own Destiny at the very end. And of course, my most anticipated match outside of Tate Mayfair's and Luke Jacobs fighting for the championship is, one of the best women's wrestlers in the British scene and one of my new favorites, Rio, taking on the legendary Mako Satomura. Like, anybody who has been watching our NXT reviews knows how much I am forever a stan of Mako. And she is in the realm of like the just recently retired Sumi Sakai of just being a legendary Japanese women's wrestler. By the way, shout out to Sumi. Like, that was my favorite part of Battle in the Valley. The whole roster coming out to celebrate her retirement. 26 years in the industry, Andrew. That is crazy.
That's insane. But as we wrap it up here for GCW live in London, give us any final thoughts that you have, and what would be your grade for this event?
So my final thoughts for this, as this is, I call this like a spin-off event because while I still enjoyed the People versus GCW, like we talked about in the review last week, there were just some parts of the show that kind of took us out of it. There were things that we could have cut. I feel like this show definitely kind of set the correction course of those kind of like, I don't know how I feel about these feelings. It was like, I feel like this was a smart move of after such a big, heavy show that was the People versus GCW to go into something like this and just have a good time. If I had to give a grade from beginning to end, factoring in the wrestling and how much I personally enjoyed this, I would give this like a solid B plus. I feel like a lot of that stems from the fact that we got to see a lot of the Progress talent kind of link up with the GCW talent. And you know what? I went in this show understanding that this wasn't going to be anything too crazy, but and I feel like sometimes that's what shows need to be. You just need to have a good time from beginning to end. So yeah, I give it a B plus. I enjoyed myself.
Nice. Yeah, I felt all the same way. I did think this was a good kind of redirect, get us back on track. Lots of fun, lots of excitement. A great show to showcase both companies' promoters, as well as getting to see the home of Progress Wrestling. If you saw the report, you saw my grade. I gave this show a B. I thought it was a lot of fun, really entertaining, good matches from beginning to end, and some really highlighted matches that I thought were just phenomenal, and some stuff to look forward in the future. So looking forward to what both these companies are going to bring us in the next few days to the next month or two. So keep an eye out for all that because it's going to be a lot of fun. But with that, I tag you back in to close us out.
Sweet. I love that. So, of course, that's going to wrap us up here at Ultraviolet Union. But to fear not, because me and Andrew are going to be spending a lot of time together. Hopefully, we want to do a Defy Wrestling watch along for the event next week. So depending on how those things go, we might be doing that. And then of course we'll be back with another GCW review with the J Cup. So no live watch alongs for those, but I'm excited to cover that tournament. And so excuse me. I'm super excited. I'm sneezing all over the place. No, but shout out to Andrew for always holding it down with GCW and being our correspondent with all of this. Like, he is my go-to dude when I'm looking at stuff. I'm like, oh my gosh, did you see this about GCW? Because I'm super excited. And so, yeah, we'll be back again with the J Cup in a couple of weeks. And then, stay tuned because I am super excited to be finally covering Progress Wrestling. So I'm looking forward to the review at the end of February for My Own Destiny. But for both myself and Andrew and the rest of the BC WrestlePod family, remember, take care of yourself, love one another, stay Bi-Conic, and more importantly than anything, you always deserve to finish your story. We will catch you tomorrow night for a TNA review. But until then, sayonara, adios, and we'll catch you later. Ta-ta for now.